Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Spencer from Gray Capital. If you're interested in investing in real estate syndications, maybe you've already been investing in real estate syndications, but especially if you're thinking about it, a lot of people, they're wondering, all right, I've sent over my money, I've made that wire over to the company bank account. What happens next? What are the next steps? What happens as soon as we close on that property? What happens on site? And then eventually that leads to you getting an actual distribution and getting a return and putting some of that money back into your own wallet. Well, we have an incredibly specific plan that we use at most of our properties. Each one's tailored for each individual acquisition, but we wanted to kind of take you through what that process is for as soon as we acquire a property, what happens on that day of acquisition, the next week, 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days to produce the most successful investment possible. First, I'm gonna say, appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you find these videos interesting, you're interested in multifamily investing, real estate investing, make sure you're subscribed to the Gray Capital YouTube channel. You give this video a like and leave a comment below if you have any questions whatsoever. On the day of closing, it's not like closing on a single family home where you may have the buyer and the seller all meeting at a title agency's office or an attorney's office, kind of waiting everything to kind of come through, you're signing documents. It's a little bit different in terms of a commercial real estate transaction. Most of the documents are signed days prior because there are significant amount of documents like a single family home sale or purchase, but even more for multifamily. You can imagine all the partnership documents. Typically for myself as kind of the lead sponsor, a principal, and a manager for these investments, I'm typically signing anywhere between kind of 50 and 70 individual documents, or at least signature pages to kind of get the deal done entirely. So everything is signed a couple days prior, attorneys have reviewed all the documents, everything is all buttoned up and ready to go. I mean, there's been a ton of work prior to this point that we're not gonna get into today, from due diligence to negotiations to inspections to doing title work and survey work and insurance and legal and getting the loan in place. That's all been done at this point. The paperwork's been signed. Typically the last step is some kind of final sign off from the lender that's gonna be providing the debt for the acquisition. Once the lender's given that sign off, funds are wired from the lender as well as from the purchaser, typically us or whatever syndication or sponsor is buying the property. Money goes to the title company, wait around, finally have those wires hit. Then they are released after everyone's given approval that everything is the way that it's supposed to be, everything looks correct, all the numbers are the right. That money is then distributed. The seller receives their funds, the lenders being paid off receive their funds right around the same time, and sometimes it can take place earlier that same day. Our new on-site team is ready to take over that property. Oftentimes, you're able to retain much of the on-site staff that's working at that property. So hopefully your property manager is a good property manager and they've accepted employment with the property management company to continue to work on that property. Not always can you retain the staff on site, and if you can't, would have already been going through the hiring process looking for replacements. If you don't have that replacement staff to start right away, you're going to have personnel either from other properties, swing personnel, or a regional manager to come in and fill those roles until you have permanent staff in place on site that can manage the property going forward. But whatever the makeup of the staff is, one of the first things that is done is some sort of staff orientation and onboarding for the new property management company. It's getting them logged into the system and starting to explain how the new property management company operates, what the business plan is, and how things are going to be different compared to the last owner. We also want to start onboarding and introducing ourselves to new residents. This typically is done by sending out an email or some kind of electronic communication to residents that the property has been sold, who the new owners are, and the steps that they need to take to sign up for the new payment portal and new systems that they'll be using to pay their rent and to track any updates from the property itself. There's also a physical letter that is typically taped on every single door or slid under the door, every single resident at the property, notifying them that the property has been sold, who the new owners are, who the new property manager is, and all the contacts, and again, the steps to take to get them signed up for the resident portal. The next step, which really should have taken place prior to closing on the property, or at least should have been started, is to start transferring all of the systems, specifically the property management software, over to whatever system that you're now going to be using from the prior owner's system. This is a relatively straightforward process, but it can get very complicated because some systems communicate to others a little bit easier. If the past owner is using the same property management software, that makes it very easy. But getting all of that loaded in is incredibly important. And also, again, setting up that resident portal so they can go on and actually start paying you rent as soon as possible, communicating with residents throughout the process to make sure that when they are aware of the sale and that they are aware that they need to change their payment information and they need to go into the new portal to get set up so they can continue to pay rent. The last piece on operations is really updating all of your vendors, giving them an update that there's new ownership, updating any contracts that need to be updated, giving any notifications that need to be given, and then also doing a new market survey. You should have already been doing market surveys prior to close, but now that you're actually on site, it's a good time to kind of go through your market comparative analysis to see what competitive properties are currently charging, what their occupancy rates are, what type of offers, or if they're giving away any concessions, to make sure that your rents are set at the appropriate level and you're taking the right steps from a leasing and marketing standpoint to maximize the performance of the property. So that was operations. Now let's talk about marketing. Marketing is relatively straightforward. Again, it ties into doing that market survey of competitive properties. But you want to make sure that if you're going to be using an internet listing service like apartments.com, you don't want to lose any time. You want to be able to get on that service as soon as possible with the updated pictures, photos, videos, the correct rent information, the correct floor plans, and making that listing look as professional as possible. The other piece is making sure that the property website is up and running. It's been updated with, again, the best pictures that you have, the most updated rents, the resident portal is all set up. And so when a prospective resident searches for you or an apartment in the area, they have all of the means and the tools to actually be able to sign that lease. The third big component is construction. Now, you've been building a budget kind of throughout the process, even before that you place the property under contract. While you're under contract and due diligence, you're refining the scope of your renovation plan, any kind of capital expenditures you're going to be doing. You're doing your best to get any bids and quotes, but usually you can't get complete bids until you actually close on the property because you don't have complete access for the property. You may be limited to what you can actually do on site outside of your due diligence period. You can get a good amount of work done prior. You typically can't get all of those final bids, especially going back to your second and third vendor to get those second and third bids. Typically that can't be done until after you close. So that's one part of the process that started immediately after you close on the property. The first project that we're always looking at doing is what are lender required repairs and health and safety issues that we need to address immediately. Whether it's issues in the sidewalk, whether it is balconies that are leaning over, any kind of trip hazards, anything that could be a liability at the property. Typically your insurance company, your lender are going to be requiring a lot of these fixes, but we've done a large assessment, a detailed assessment during our due diligence period. Everything needs to be taken care of the property within the first 30 days. So we are getting started on scheduling those repairs to take place within that first month of ownership, but also getting those bids for those larger projects that may not take place until later on in the year or later on in the hold period. But you're doing that to be able to finalize your budget so you have a good and holistic picture of what that investment is going to look like and what the construction process will look like over the next year or two.